Welcome to this latest edition in our video series called 5 Questions. 5 questions that we ask a scholar of public law about his or her research. And today, we're joined by Professor Wojciech Sadurski, the Challis Professor of Jurisprudence at the University of Sydney. And right now, he's in the United States as a visiting professor of law at Fordham University. Wojciech, thank you very much for accepting this invitation.
It is my great pleasure, Richard.
I should say, Wojciech, that you were nominated for 5 questions. We received an email from one of our readers, viewers, saying, please interview Wojciech Sadurski.
I'm very pleased to hear that. Thank you.
So, Wojciech, first question. What are you researching and writing about right now?
Well, there are 2 big themes on which I have been working over the recent months and on which I will continue. One of them is a set of issues on which so many of our colleagues work these days, and these are constitutional dimensions of this populist turn or authoritarian turn or illiberal turn in what used to be liberal democracies these days. And I have just completed a book on a case study in this issue that is on Poland, entitled Poland's Constitutional Breakdown, to appear very soon with Oxford Press. But there are so many issues which I have been able only to touch because I was confined more or less to one country. And this is something I'm planning to continue and to take a broader comparative and also theoretical view to make sense of these very disturbing developments. My second and longer term project on which I have been working for some time, and then I have to put it, so to speak, to one side when I got involved in this analysis of Poland, was about an idea of public reason, which is a philosophical idea, but in my view at least, never properly adapted to constitutional law. I find that in this Rawlsian idea that laws are legitimate based on the motives or intentions which trigger them or reasons which they pursue is very powerful and can be seen not only in the United States constitutionalism, but also in constitutionalism around the world. So I'm planning to complete a book on what I initially call or tentatively call constitutional public reason.
So you've just completed one book. You are in the midst of writing another. When do you write and how do you write? Do you have a routine or do you just write whenever the time appears?
No, definitely the latter. I don't have any routine. I don't have any special hours which I set aside just for writing or for researching a new topic. It rather comes when I have time. And of course, for us, teaching is always a priority, not only because I like teaching, but also because teaching imposes some non-negotiable timing on you. So basically, I try to find the time for research or for writing when I have done other things which are maybe not more important, but more urgent. So no, the answer is I don't have any particular canonical template or method which I could share with someone else because it just comes whenever I have time.
Yes, you're very busy. You travel and you give lectures and you have a number of different visiting appointments. So I would imagine that it must be very difficult to be able to set aside dedicated hours of every single day. So that makes sense. Now, Wojciech, when did you know that this is the life that you wanted to lead, that you wanted to be a professor, an academic, a scholar of the law?
Well, I don't think there was ever any particular moment when I deliberately took this decision. It just happened this way. When I was a student, a law student, I was dreaming about a totally different career. I wanted to be a theater director, but I wasn't talented enough. So I think that was the second best. I also, having studied law, I also realized that I probably wouldn't be a very good practicing lawyer, perhaps because my father was a practicing lawyer, a very good one. And watching his work, I realized that I wouldn't be particularly good at it. So these were partly negative reasons, but there were also very positive factors. As I have already mentioned, I like teaching a lot, and I like interacting intellectually with other people. So all that produced an outcome, which is that I am a law professor.
Let's go back to your days as a law student. Can you think back to those years, to a paper, a book, some piece of scholarship that was influential to you then at the time and that today continues to resonate with you and your scholarship?
Yes, here I will be totally unoriginal, but I want to be sincere rather than original. And definitely, and by a very, very long shot, there has been such a book, which still constitutes for me probably the most important item in my bookshelves, and that is John Rawls's Theory of Justice. For me, it was a real revelation. I had, before reading A Theory of Justice, I had known those 3 or 4 famous articles by Rawls. He hadn't written more than that. And I wasn't all that impressed. It was only when I saw his ideas in this very, very broad framework within the book that I realized what a revelation it is. And the revelation was that I realized, to my sort of surprise, that you can be at the same time unashamedly normative and on the other hand, extremely systematic and analytical. It seemed to me that John Rawls has most successfully, of all scholars in the field, overcome this problem that either you are normative and then it is more like a political tract or expression of your wishful thinking, or you are very analytical and precise, but then you basically dissect the meaning of the words, none of which is terribly attractive. Now, by producing a work on justice, which at the same time is totally prescriptive and normative on the one hand, but on the other hand, which is so precise and analytically solid, he produced the work which so many people take either consciously or unconsciously as a point of reference. Now, I took it consciously, and it is still probably the most important book I've read in my life.
Thank you for that. And final question, Wojciech, for you, still about your own work, which is, among all of the things you've written books and chapters and collected volumes and articles, is there one that is dearest to you, perhaps most important to you, perhaps even most reflective of you and of your work?
Well, there is one, and that may come as a surprise to many, because very few people read it, at least judging by references, by citations. Probably none of my colleagues ever read it. I can't say it's the most important article, because it does not really reflect my long-term interests and commitments, but in many respects it's my favorite piece, which I like the most and with which I think with a lot of sentiment. That was my only foray in my academic life into the field totally outside my educational and professional background, namely to literary theory. There was a time when I was extremely intrigued and fascinated by a Spanish playwright and poet, Calderón de la Barca, and in particular in his most important play called Life's a Dream, La Vida es Sueño. And I wrote a piece in which I tried to analyze this play, on which I had been thinking a lot then, in terms of what I've learned from the disciplines I studied, and in particular in terms of contemporary approaches to collective decision-making, and in particular a theory by Jon Elster, in whom I have been very, very much interested. Now, this article was published in a very small literary journal in Canada. That was the only journal that would accept it. The article was rejected a few times before. I wasn't surprised at all. It is called Calderon's Conundrums. And whenever I think of an article which, writing which, and also thinking about which gives me a sense of deep satisfaction, that's this one.
Oh, well, thank you for that. This is, in fact, what we search for when we write, is a feeling of satisfaction, a feeling that we have hit the ball right in the middle, in the sweet spot. Thank you for sharing that with us, Wojciech Sadurski, Chalice Professor of Jurisprudence at the University of Sydney and currently a visiting professor of law at Fordham University. It's been a pleasure to talk with you, and we'll be glad to share this video with our viewers and our readers. Thank you, Wojciech.
Thank you very much, Richard, and always great pleasure talking to you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.